You're listening to the Amplifying Leadership Podcast, where we explore what great leadership really looks like through our guest stories, actionable takeaways, and expert conversations. I'm Tara Lehman, founder and CEO of Amplifying Leadership, here to help you lead with intention and influence. Thanks for tuning into today's guest episode. Today, I am welcoming back Kate Hendrickson, a consultant, author, and leader. Welcome back to Amplifying Leadership.
Hi, Tara. So happy to be back.
And I love what we're about to talk about today because it is something that gets missed all the time. But before we do that, in case anybody did not hear your last episode when you joined us, why don't you let our audience know a little bit more about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. So as you shared, I am a consultant and author. I really focus working with businesses on strategy and long-term growth and accelerating that through goals and action planning. It is truly a passion of mine. I as a child did it, and I have grown in continuing to do that kind of work. My mom always said I would make lists and make plans, as a young girl. So continuing to do that and helping others as well. And then I also wrote a book, which has nothing to do with consulting and leadership, but a fun hobby. I'm a writer as a hobby and wrote a rom-com, light-hearted book.
Fun.
So I live in my life in multiple lanes and love every second of it.
That sounds like a lot of fun too.
It is.
Very
It is
good.
a lot of fun.
So last time we spoke was all about setting those goals and talking key performance indicators and all of that type of thing. And today we're going to dive into that a little bit more because we don't want to just do it once a year. But before we get to that, why don't you tell our leaders or business owners here why goals and having key performance indicators are extremely important?
Sure, absolutely. Without specific goals or targets that you're trying to reach, right? Everything is a dream. Like I dream I want to
Yes.
I dream I want my company to grow, right? I dream I want to have more a bigger team, or I want to help more people, or whatever that may look like for you. It's all a dream until you start really getting specific on what are you going to do to get there? What are your targets that you're looking to achieve? What's your timeline around that? And who's going to help you along the way? Because
Mm-hmm.
you can't always do it alone. So there's a lot of specifics that you can hone in on and focus in on to really help get you there. But until then, it's a lot of dreams. It's fun to dream, but it doesn't always get you where you want to go.
It's always a wish, right? I always say it's a
It
wish.
is
In your
a
case, it's a
wish,
dream if we don't
a
do anything
dream.
about it. Yeah.
Exactly.
So a lot of people do goals, visions for businesses, KPIs even at the beginning of maybe it's their fiscal or the beginning of an annual calendar year. And
Mhm.
then they've set them and they don't do anything else with them. I mean, I don't know how many companies I've worked with where I say, well, where is your goals now compared to when you set them? And they just look at me like, I didn't even think about looking at them again. So clearly they forgot about them. Why is that a big
Right.
mistake?
You're not going to see the progress you're hoping for, right? When you're not looking at them
Mhm.
consistently. So yes, you might have a target and a destination you want to achieve, but if you're not consistently holding yourself accountable and your team accountable to those targets and that you want to achieve, consistently looking at them, looking at what you might need to change or do differently and course correct, you're going to start to notice that you either fall behind, or if you don't, you might not even notice it if you're not looking, right?
Yeah.
You're going to fall behind and not even realize it sometimes, which can be very difficult. I think the other thing that's important to think about is, you have your goals, you January 1, or like you said, whenever your fiscal year starts, you have everything set in place, right? You might have great goals with data to track and targets that that are achievable, but then you start to get pulled into other directions sometimes, right? And so you start
Mhm.
to have other fires that you need to put out, and you start living more in that reactive space again instead of that proactive space. And so I think if you don't specifically find that time dedicated to looking at your goals on a consistent basis, right? That's where you're going to continue to live in that reactive state instead of that proactive state.
And I think that's a key point too, the reactive versus proactive. I always say to people, you need to have strategic time built into your calendar. It can't just be reacting to every fire that comes up. which goals and KPIs can be a great way to monitor those things, especially if you have monthly KPIs and you're just tracking them and you're doing nothing with them. It means nothing. You're doing nothing, right? I mean, you need to take
Yes.
action.
Yes.
So I
And
want
it's
to,
easy. Oh,
oh, go
sorry.
ahead. No, no, go
No, I
ahead.
was just saying, and it's easy to push that aside, right? Like, so
Yes.
something else comes up that is, with a client or a customer or a team member, and well, I was going to work on goals, or I was going to pull the data to see how we're tracking, but something else came up. And it's so easy to say that can wait till later, but it really
Mhm.
can't wait till later. It needs to be a priority.
It could be anything from your sales are going down, you're not recognizing it, to your inventory's all over the place, or whatever that is, and you're not even recognizing there's issues. So I want to come back to something you said earlier, which is about setting timelines, which I love. And people are good at doing this, right? The KPIs, we're going to look at them every quarter. That's the timeline. And then the timeline passes. How do we attach accountability to making sure that that timeline, we actually sit down and review it?
Right. I am a huge proponent of an accountability partner, and that could
Mm,
look different to everyone. So it can be a consultant coach, kind of like Tara, like you and I, or we
mhm.
partner with people and hold them accountable, and we hop on the phone every week or 2 weeks or month or quarter, whatever
Mhm.
that might look like, and say we're going to look at your goals, and you need to show up with
Yeah.
your data, and if we see you're not moving as quickly as we would have anticipated, we're going to have a conversation about what needs to be done differently, and we're your accountability partner in that. Or
Mhm.
maybe you're of a partner in the business. Maybe it's, you have someone that you're in the business with, a business partner who you need to hold each other accountable. But it's very hard to do it on your own. I'm gonna be very
Mhm.
honest. It's very hard to do it on your own. So whatever that accountability partner looks like for you, having that person that says this time is not negotiable, this call is not being moved, this meeting's not being rescheduled. We're pulling this data, we're looking at our KPIs, we're looking at our targets on a consistent basis, and holding each other accountable to that. And it's kind of fun because if I'm holding you accountable, you don't want to let me down, right? And
Mhm.
same
Exactly.
thing with
Yeah.
me, right? Like you're working with me and I want you to succeed. I'm not going to let you down and reschedule that meeting because I know how important that is for us to take a look at your goals and make sure that you're moving in the right direction. So, um, I think that's my kind of number one tip to staying focused is finding what that accountability partner and whatever that looks like in your business, and someone who's going to not be
Mhm.
afraid to have those tough conversations and ask the tough questions.
I agree. Sometimes family, not the best option, or people you live with. They're great to listen to you vent about things, but they're not always the best people to keep you accountable. I have to share a story from a client of mine a couple of years ago, very small organization, and she was having issues as a business owner with keeping accountable. And so she wanted to set that meeting a recorder. So she set it in the calendar, recurring with her team. And she said, if I cancel that, I owe you all $10. So
I
money
love
was
it.
a big accountability factor for her, right?
Right,
So
right, right.
whatever works.
I agree. Whatever is going to make that meeting happen.
Yeah.
I completely agree. I love that what you just said though about you put it on the calendar, reoccurring. It is there for the whole year
Mhm.
or whatever that time frame looks like. Because I do find I've been in situations where we have the meeting and they say, okay, well, during that meeting, we're going to schedule the next meeting. And during that
Mhm.
meeting, we'll schedule the next meeting. And then you know what? A meeting gets skipped and a meeting gets missed.
Yeah.
We don't want that to happen, but whatever, things happen. And then wait, we don't have another meeting on the calendar. And then all of a sudden
Mhm.
we've gone 3 months and wait, we haven't spoken in 3 months. We haven't looked at our goals in 3 months. Wait, what happened? And I love what you said about making sure that you've got those meetings set up for an entire year or 6 months or whatever that looks like for you.
Mhm.
So that time is blocked and dedicated for those conversations.
Yeah, it's almost like treating it like that, specialist doctor's appointment that takes months or years to get into. You don't move
Right.
it, right?
Right.
So let me ask you this. When it comes around, people forgetting about these things, very easy to do, right? Slips the mind, or other priorities, even though this is strategic and should be a priority, other things we get reactive, right? So now we've got our meeting, we're ready to talk. How often should we do this, do you think? Is there like sometimes when it needs to be monthly, sometimes quarterly, sometimes every 6 months? I mean, annually, we already said that's too far, right? But
Right.
what are your thoughts around that?
My preference and recommendation is monthly, is at a minimum monthly. If you are the owner, founder, proprietor of that business, it should be more often. But when you're reviewing it
Mhm.
either with your team or a direct report, at a minimum, I would say you're taking a look at it monthly. And then you can also, in addition to having conversations, have it posted somewhere. So if you actually have a,
Mhm.
freestanding building or space or office space, you could potentially have it posted and updated weekly where they can see how we're tracking and see what how we're doing as a team or as a company. And then in that a monthly conversation, whether it's a all team monthly meeting where we're saying, hey, we're really seeing some success here, but hey, we need to work on some things here. Maybe we're going to do something different because we're not seeing what we were hoping to achieve. And that conversation could be monthly as a team or monthly one-to-one. I love one-to-one meetings. I love
Mhm.
saying,
Yes.
really diving in and saying, hey, these are our goals as a organization, and this is how you contribute to them. This is how you're a part of the team and you help us be successful because you do X, Y, and Z, and you're really good at that. So let's talk about how you're helping us grow as a company and a team, and really making them feel part of that growth. So I love a one-on-one meeting. I love an all team meeting, celebrating the
Mhm.
success and the wins, and maybe some training or development might be needed on something that might need to be done differently. And then having some kind of visual, whether it's
Yeah.
a dashboard that is easy to see or access. I think it should be top of mind kind of all the time, to be
I
honest.
think so. Yeah, strategic for sure. And I love the idea of the visibility piece. I think the visibility piece is really important because if we don't share that with all of our team members, and we used to do that in my organization, I would post all the KPIs, including sales, for everybody to see. It didn't matter if they were on the floor or not, so that everybody could, as you say, buy into them by
Right.
making sure they understand what it is that they do to help achieve those goals. Because that janitor, I've said before on my podcast, that janitor helps your sales. If you don't see it, I'll explain it real quickly, but that janitor is emptying the bins or cleaning your office, keeping things clean so that you can put your focus where you need to be and you're organized. There are
Absolutely.
ways,
I agree.
everybody, right? Yeah.
Everybody contributes to the success of the organization. I completely agree.
And I love the idea of the one-on-one, and just because sometimes people are more introverted or maybe they process a little bit differently. So that one-on-one, do you feel that gives them the opportunity to maybe provide more ideas, especially if they're a little bit introverted in a group setting?
Absolutely. And I think think about that janitor, right? They may have a really hard time understanding how they're contributing to sales. And you might not want to call
Mm-hmm.
them out in a monthly meeting and explain it, but that one to one meeting can really help them understand, hey, this is how you're helping us be successful. And we're so glad you're here and we're so glad you're a part of the team. Or if there's something that, hey, we're really having a hard time achieving this goal, let's think about maybe how you're contributing, or maybe something we might need to do differently, and let them brainstorm and let them contribute to solving the problem. I think one-on-ones are, no matter where you are, or who you are in the organization or what role you play, I think that is a wonderful time to celebrate wins and brainstorm and problem solve on what we can do
Mm-hmm.
differently as a team. And it's hopefully a really comfortable conversation. It should be a very comfortable conversation, even if you're not doing okay. I think it's more of a, hey, heads up, this is not this we're not achieving what we
Yeah.
need to.
Yeah.
Let's think about what we need to do differently. Kind of conversation.
Which brings me to my next question, because there's lots of strategies when goals, KPIs, they're not being met, right? So one of them could be, let's brainstorm how we could meet sales, for example. What other
Hmm.
strategies do you have if we are starting to maybe fall behind on goals? We're looking at them and I'm just going to pick on sales because everybody can recognize that. The KPI is, January was a bad month. Okay. So we look at that. Okay. February, not great. March, it's not looking good. What are some strategies that we can do with that information? What do we do with it besides brainstorming, which is great? What else would there be?
Sure, sure. I think there's a few different things. I think if we're consistently having those conversations with our team, whether it's a monthly team meeting or a one-on-one meeting, and it's not going to be a surprise when they say, "Oh, we're not meeting our sales goal this quarter," right? This is not brand new information because you're consistently showing them and and talking about it. So maybe we need to look at not just strategy, but what are we doing operationally? What do we need to change? Maybe there's some other areas we need to make some changes and adjustments other than push, push, push sales
Hmm.
to try to help balance that out. And so maybe we need to adjust other areas and not. So I think that's one thing to kind of just think through as an entire organization and team. Where do we need to make shifts and adjustments? Another fun thing that a company I worked for did, and I have recommended it to a few people, is a bright ideas kind of. So they did a box, but or online submittal or whatever, maybe a survey, whatever. But if you come up with an idea that's going to help either save money or make money, either one, it was, he had to save money or make
Yep.
money. If you came up with a bright idea that save money or make money, and I think you got a little bump or something if it was implemented. And then if it was successful after 90 days, you got another little like token of appreciation, whatever it may be. Right. And
Hmm.
so it could be, if you submitted something that as a company said, well, yeah, we think that'll work. Maybe you got a $50 bump, or we took you to lunch, or whatever it may be. Right.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then 90 days later, we look back and said, hey, we implemented this. It was Tara's idea. We have now, that's now saved the company X amount of dollars. There's another little incentive for that as well. So I think those
Hmm.
are kind of fun ways to incorporate the team. And then you might actually get some great ideas that are going to save you money or drive more sales, right? Whatever it may be.
Hmm.
So I think thinking creatively sometimes can help you figure out some new ways to hit those targets.
I would agree. And I think that just because someone, comes in 9 to 5, does their job and walks out doesn't mean that they don't know somebody who gave them a great idea from something that was happening somewhere else, but you haven't asked. And so, you see like the cost savings key performance indicator. We have to save 5% this year. And that's a tough one for people to think about, especially leaders, because we're like, I don't want to get rid of people. I don't want to get rid of this.
Right.
But in my organization, people were like, well, why don't we get lights that just turn on and off when someone goes down the aisle of the warehouse so we're not wasting electricity, or changing the types of lighting, for example, right? There's just things that can
Yes.
come from somebody else that you as a leader may not see as well, right? I mean, I love
Yes.
that idea.
I agree. And just like like you shared the bright ideas idea, I mean, process or system, it was for everybody in the company. So if the
Hmm.
janitor who was taking out the trash and overhearing a conversation and got, oh man, this could be helpful, can submit a bright idea that might help the sales team or the operations team or whatever it may
Exactly.
be.
Yeah.
So it really pulls the team together. And I love when they also announce those things and share with the team, hey, Tara submitted an idea, we implemented it, we 90 days later we saw some great success. Like, let's congratulate Tara, we're so glad she's
Yeah.
on the team, right? Like, use it for moments of managing up and celebrating wins and making the team feel connected.
And boost morale for sure.
Yes,
Oh,
yes, for
yeah.
sure. And
So
there goes those
let's,
people goals. Those
yeah,
people goals, right? You get your
yes.
if you're looking at a retention of your team, right? There you go. You're helping right there also.
Exactly. So now let's say we're looking at these every month, but really mid-year, we should probably have a bigger review. What would you suggest is part of a process of a mid-year KPI or goal review that might be different than the regular, hey, how are we doing type ones that probably shorter? Is there a process you recommend or a strategy you recommend for those?
Sure. So, in addition to pulling your data and looking how you've tracked every month, I recommend also pulling together some annualized data. So, if we were to continue to work in the same way as we did the first 6 months of the year, and we do the same thing the next 6 months of the year, are we going to hit the target we wanted to achieve? If not, that's where we say, hey, what do we need to change and course correct? And I think you should ask yourself a couple of questions. Has something changed in the business that outside of our control, the external change outside of our control
Mhm.
that may warrant us to change our target? So I worked with a lot of people during COVID, and I know we bring that
Yes.
up, but it's one that everybody can relate to, right? That changed a lot of things for a lot of people, no matter what industry you were in, right? Whether
Hmm.
financially, the ability to, if you're in a service related industry, nobody wanted to be around other people. So you weren't,
Yep.
that those services weren't being done. Or people weren't out buying and shopping and because they weren't out and about. And so you weren't seeing
Hmm.
products being sold as much. Just depends on what your healthcare, man, so many changes to healthcare from
Oh,
all
yes.
goals of service, finance, people, all of it. So did something externally happen that said, hey, we might need to change our targets because we had no control or limited control over this
Mm-hmm.
specific situation. I think that warrants that conversation. And maybe you say yes, it warrants changing the target. And maybe you say
Mm-hmm.
no, we're going to keep our target as is. We're going to continue to move forward, but we're going to maybe do some things a little bit differently than we've been doing in the
Right.
past. And that's okay too. But I think at mid-year point is the time to have that conversation. Um, I had somebody I worked with, and they were a very small business. They had, I think, the owner and two people that worked for them, for him, and so he still did a lot of the work. It was a service related industry. He still did a lot of the work and worked with the customers, and then he ended up breaking his leg. And it
Oh,
was one of
wow.
those things that where he thought, okay, I can't get out there and
Mm-hmm.
physically work with the clients anymore. So he had to really think through, am I going to achieve our targets that we had from a growth perspective, a finance
Right.
perspective, a service perspective? He ultimately made some minor tweaks. He didn't completely scratch the goals and say, "Oh, this year's gone. We
Mm-hmm.
lost it.
Yeah.
I my leg's broken and I'm out of commission for the next few months." He did make some minor tweaks to the target, but he also just readjusted some of the work and responsibilities for the
Mm-hmm.
two guys who worked for him, and he actually gave one of the guys some paid for him to have some additional training so he could do
Oh,
some step in and do some of the things that he wasn't doing. So that was his way to course correct this a little bit, was upskilling one of the guys who worked for
excellent.
him, readjusting roles and responsibilities. He took on some of the kind of paperwork that they were doing, out in the field, because
Mm-hmm.
he could do that from the office. And there he did make, minor tweaks to his target, based on a little bit of gut, a little bit of data, a little bit of just knowing, hey, something happened beyond my control. And I think that's okay sometimes. It's okay to
Mm-hmm.
just reevaluate. What I don't want to see happen is you say, "Hey, it's not going in our favor. We're just not even going to look at these again until January, and we'll reset some goals again, in
Mm-hmm. Or
January,
lower them or
right?"
whatever,
Or
right?
lower
Yeah.
them so much that it's going to be so we've already met the goals, right? So I
Yeah.
think that's what we want to avoid.
What I love is that you talk about that we can be creative and innovative in how we can, maybe we do need to lower the goal, but not just but because we know there's something holding us back. But what are ways that we can make it better for ourselves and not have to lower it down as far, like training or redoing
Exactly.
roles and responsibilities? I mean, how creative is that? Rather than just being stuck in, I do this, you do that, and therefore we can't. Right?
Exactly.
Love that. Love
Exactly.
that. I want to give you a couple of minutes to share any other thoughts about these monthly or mid-year strategies on goals and KPIs that maybe we haven't covered as we wrap up today.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I if anybody has followed me, or if you decide to follow me a little bit, you'll learn that I'm all about being on having a destination and being on a journey, and that we do have to course correct, sometimes we do have to
Mm-hmm.
make a U-turn, sometimes we have to make some decisions and there's a fork in the road, right? I think that's how we um ultimately continue to accelerate and drive forward. So, with that being said, I think when it comes to that mid-year adjustment, if you find out, hey, I took a wrong turn, I don't want you to feel like it's failure. You're still going to get to that destination. You might just have to go a different route and go a different
Mm-hmm.
direction, and that's okay. Um, Sometimes you might have to, pull off the side of the road and rethink and reevaluate and remap. And I never want anyone to feel like that's a failure. I just, sometimes it's a bump in the road but you're still going to get to your destination.
A bump in the road is always a lesson learned and a way forward. Always.
Absolutely. Agreed.
Thank you so much for the conversation today. I know that you and I could go on and on and on about goals and
We
KPIs
could.
and on we could, but we are at the end of our time today. So let us know how we can connect with you online or somewhere else.
Sure, sure. So I shared the last time we were together that my website's kate-hendrickson.com, and it is. But I also have thestrategylane.com now. So I have two websites, and the strategy lane
Excellent.
might be easier to remember. So you can reach me at thestrategylane.com, and I am excited to talk. I could talk about this all day. So if anybody just wanted to talk, chat, pick my brain, happy to do so. And then that can also lead you to my social media pages and LinkedIn and Instagram and all the things. So if you want to follow along on my road trip and my journey, I'd love to have you.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for all your insights today.
Tara, it's always fun. Always fun.
It is. Of course, we thank all of you, our listeners. We do hope you gained some valuable insights and practical takeaways from today's conversation with Kate. If you did enjoy this episode, please consider leaving us a rating or a review, as it is one of the best ways to support the podcast and help us and our guests like Kate reach even more leaders with these meaningful stories, tips, and advice. If you are looking to clarify leadership priorities, build strong, powered teams, or empower those around you, I'm here to help. Explore our solutions, offers, resources, and the Amplifying Leadership Circle community at amplifyingleadership.ca. Because leadership is better when we do it together. Until next time, remember, leadership matters.